would be based just on the geographical area in which the house is in. That's not true. Culture is determined by the people that are in that house. And it's primarily determined by the people who lead that house. Don't miss what I'm about to say. Every leader is a cultural architect.
Yes, that's true.
Every leader is a cultural architect. Yes. In other words, you get the kind of house you desire. You either do that by intention or you do it by default. It's either by what you permit or by what you choose. Don't ever forget this. You never change what you're willing to tolerate. Selah. You never change what you're willing to permit. So if you continue to allow certain things to go on, they'll never change. But culture trumps vision every time.
Right.
People believe if I can just get a vision for this church, or if these people would just catch my vision, then we can move this church forward. But culture trumps vision every time. Because vision is a seed. Culture is a womb. And if you put a powerful seed in a toxic womb, the womb will abort the seed every time. Because seed does not tell the ground what to become. Yeah? Jesus talked about the fact that it doesn't matter how strong your seed is. If it gets thrown into the wrong ground, it won't produce to its potential.
Yeah.
Because the ground, the culture, the environment is what determines the potential of the seed. So I believe there's probably a lot of people in this room today that's got great vision. The problem is not with your vision. The problem is that you don't take the time to build the culture to receive your vision.
That's right. That's right.
Because if you try to deposit that vision into the wrong culture, that culture will shut that vision down every time. Every time. And when you start a church or plant a church in particular or revitalize a church, you have to realize everybody coming in the building comes with their own mindset as to what that church should be.
That's true.
That's why one of the things in our what we call Covenant Partners class, we tell people if God sent you here, we know that he didn't send you here to change us.
Amen.
So just know that we were here and he leads us through the leadership of this house. He didn't send you here to create a riot and try to change things.
Right.
If he's going to change it, he's going to change it through the people that help lead it. Because we get to determine the culture of what's going to go on in our house. Am I doing all right? Am I making sense? When we get to sit and talk about the culture, that goes from everything as to how we welcome people, how we embrace diversity, the kind of sound that our house makes. It's going to be very particular to who we are because we get to determine the culture. Because our church, I'll tell you, I was sharing with the brothers over here a while ago. When I went to Oklahoma City, I went to take a church that had been very successful. In fact, at one time it had been one of the largest churches in the city. And through a divorce, after 42 years, the pastor went into a divorce and divorced his wife. And over the next 6 years, the church went from about 4,000 to the first Sunday I was there, we had 172. Now, our auditorium seats 3,200 on the main floor. And we had 172, and I moved 35 of them there from my offices in South Carolina. So we got there, and there was no sections roped off. People sat everywhere. You could have shot a shotgun down the center aisle and not hit anybody. Nobody. We had almost 80 lights out in the auditorium. So there were shadows everywhere. One couple was making out over in the right-hand side of the building in the back. They were in the shade making out, and I left them alone because that was the only sign of life in the room. And it seemed like the harder I preached, the more excited he got. So I just was like, go for it, man. True story.
Wow. Wow.
And we just started. When I dismissed service that day, we have 17 exits out of our building. When I dismissed service that day, in 15 minutes you could have shut the lights out and locked the door anywhere because everybody was gone. There was no sense of community. There was no sense of people being together. People came to get their blessing, and they left. The people that had been left in the church, were hurt, confused, frustrated. We had a $38,000 a month mortgage payment, $12,000 a month insurance bill, and it cost us about $2,000 a service cut the lights on. So we needed about $60,000 a month before we paid anybody, and we had 172 people. Somebody say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. I look back today and I don't even know how we made it, other than the fact that, I didn't take a salary for 2 years. I traveled. I'd preach on Sunday. I'd travel Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'd raise the money. I'd pay the team, and we would do what we did. And God did unbelievable things. I don't even have time to unpack all the miracles that happened. It was unbelievable. And as the process of coming together, Kathy and I recognized this culture will never hold our vision. This culture will kill it. I'll be right where I'm at a year from now if I don't take time to change this culture.
Yes, sir.
And I heard the Holy Spirit say to me, do not preach vision to these people because they won't be able to handle it. Love on them, let my spirit touch their life, and you behind the scenes architect different culture. So Kathy and I we emptied our retirement. I just emptied our retirement. I bought couches. We bought couches, chairs, big flower arrangements, things to put in the grand. My grand foyer we've seated 650 in the grand foyer. It's huge. And we would create sitting spaces. We created avenues for people to be together. We started intentionalizing people in community. And the next thing you know, people began to build a sense of community in that house. And it was no longer a convention center for people to come get a blessing. It became a family who had a vision that they shared together. Now today, 10 years, almost 11 years later, I left the other week. We have 2 services on Sunday. I left at about 1:30. After I went to my ready room, I changed my clothes. I was getting ready to take my family to dinner, and I pulled out of the parking lot, and there were probably still 75 or 80 cars in the parking lot. Somebody didn't lock the building up till after 2:30 because everybody in the building was talking to everybody. I spent $120,000 building a cafe in one of our foyers. I spent $130,000 building a 30-foot fireplace that's got a 5-foot opening in another one in our grand foyer. I did all those things intentional because I recognized that we needed to change culture. Am I doing all right?
Yes, sir.
Because culture trumps vision. And you have to guard the culture. Pastor Ryan said it earlier, if you don't guard it, if you don't speak to it, it will deteriorate. And everybody coming onto the team has to learn what that culture is. Let's talk about culture real quick before we go, or we go eat lunch. Culture. Write these things down because this is what plays into culture. First thing is this. For there to be culture in every house, there has to be a sense of consistency. Consistency. In other words, you can't just do something on conference week and not do it the other weeks.
Yeah.
I talked to my team about the fact we just hosted the largest conference we've hosted since I've been in Oklahoma City. We had 860 out-of-town guest pastors in our conference 2 weeks ago. So there's thousands of people on the property all day long. Yeah. But I said to them, listen, we're not going to treat this different than we treat our regular services because I refuse to be more hospitable to the people that are here once a year than I am to the people that are here every week.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
And why would we do something for people who don't help pay the bills here
Come
Yeah.
on.
hmm, that we won't do for the people that are here every week making this dream happen?
Okay.
So if we have a spirit of excellence, we don't have it just when guests are here.
That's good.
Yeah.
That means when you see people coming, see, the problem is that we get really inspired to make sure I impress you because I don't know you. But once I get to know you, I treat you as common.
It's good.
And I no longer want to be consistent with my excellence.
It's good, sir.
Because we have this feeling that because we're family, I can let down my standard. Hmm? How many of you know you have to serve the people you love just like you serve the people you don't even know?
That's right.
That's right.
So culture has to have consistency. It can't have highs and lows. This is called quality control. Somebody has to be responsible for quality control. Somebody has to be constantly going through and saying, I can walk into our auditorium. I'm probably a little bit anal. Some of you are glad you don't work for me. I can walk in the auditorium and I can be in the middle of the first song and I've already sent 3 texts. Because I'll ask somebody, why is that water bottle sitting over there behind that drum cage? And why is that chair sitting over there on the side when it was supposed to have been behind the wall? Come on, you say, what difference does it make? It doesn't make any difference if you don't care. If you don't care, it don't make any difference. But if you care, it makes a difference. And I care. You say, well, Bishop, you need to get over that. No, I don't. Don't pray. I'm not getting in your prayer line. I don't need to be healed. I have no problem working with people who make mistakes. Now, please, I have no problem with working with people who make mistakes. But I'm allergic to stupid. I don't handle that very well at all. And if some things continually repeat themselves, there's something we don't understand here. Right? So there has to be a sense of consistency. Second of all, there has to be an understanding that in every culture, there's going to be risk. Every culture. If you're going to have a culture that's conducive to growth, that's going to have to be a culture that has calculated risk. You cannot move a ministry or an organization forward without the willingness to take risk. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Now here's what happens to places the more established they become. The more established things are, the harder they are to risk. When Kathy and I were first married, we moved into a Sunday school room. I took my bride on our honeymoon, and we came back and moved into the church house, into a Sunday school room. We had to go down the hallway to a utility closet to get our clothes. We had our bathroom had a little shower in the corner. And that shower was so small that if I was to get in today, I'd have to soak the walls and do like this, because that's the only way I could get clean. I wouldn't be able to lift my hands into it at all. It was terrible. We had a double bed over against the wall over here, pushed up against the wall. We had a love seat, we had a dresser, and a 14-inch black and white TV sitting on top of it. We cooked in the fellowship hall, and we went down the hallway to get our clothes out of the utility closet. So when God told me to take a risk, I didn't have a lot to lose. Huh? So we moved in a 12-foot Ryder truck. You could put everything I owned in the back of a pickup. So I could risk it all. When God moved me from South Carolina to Oklahoma, 26 28-foot Penske trucks to move our operation. You with me? It's a whole lot bigger risk. When you're making $175 a week, like I was in the beginning, that ain't a big risk. You lose it all. Come on, how many you know you say? It's $175. when your ministry is doing 7 figures
Yeah.
and you put all that on the line. It's different. That's why people get an aversion to risk the more successful they become, because they have more to lose. But you cannot lose your desire to have calculated risk in your life.
Yes, sir.
Because if you lose your desire for calculated risk, you'll find yourself plateaued. I feel the Holy Ghost in here. Right now. There's
Yeah.
some of you in this room that have learned to navigate the level of life you're on. And you don't have to grow another inch to stay on the level you're on. And that's why God's presenting new challenges into your life, because if you stay where you're at, you never grow another inch.
Yeah.
You have learned to navigate that arena. But God is challenging you to go further, and it's causing you to have some calculated risk.
Yes, sir.
Because you can't grow without risk. Number 3, all culture demands leadership. In the context of the New Testament, Romans chapter 12 talks about those who lead. The word lead there means those who are out front. Out front. You can't lead without demonstrating out front what you want.
Yeah.
Lonnie talked about on a work day, I picked up a paintbrush. I want people to learn to be servants. Then I demonstrated. There's a book that some of you may want to read. It's called Front Row Leadership. It's written by a man from Minnesota. And he has a large church there. He was in a major denomination that he was about to pull out of. And he said, I recognized I went to every conference critical of everything the denomination did. And he said, I sat on the back row. He makes a brilliant statement. And he said, I began to use my influence to gather people to join me on the back row.
Wow.
He said, because I found out you can either lead from the front row or you can lead from the back row. And I was leading from the back row.
Wow.
And he said, I sat in the back row and I was critical of everything that happened. And he said, the Holy Spirit said to me, before you leave, why don't you get off the back row and get on the front row? Because if you're ever going to shift anything, you only shift things from the front row.
That's good, Bishop.
It's good.
You can critique things from the back row, but you only shift things from the front row. You don't have to come to the Gate Church and spend 3 weeks trying to figure out what's wrong with it. I know what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
I lead it every week. I know a lot of the weaknesses. So I don't need back row critics. If we're going to change the culture, I need some front row leaders.
Yeah.
I need somebody that's going to get up front and help me demonstrate what it is we believe for. Hmm?
That's good. That's
Am I
right.
doing all right? Come on, huh? Everybody can talk a good game. Somebody's got to get up and lead it. Hmm? Somebody's got to demonstrate it. Fourthly, culture. Everything moves at the speed of trust. Trust. You have to build into the culture an attitude of trust. Now listen to me closely. Everything in your life, you move at the speed of trust. You obey God at the speed you trust Him.
Yep. It's true.
Amen. Very good, Bishop. That's really good.
That's good. That's good.
A spirit of trust in a local church means this. If RJ is my leader, when God gives me a sense of I trust him as my leader, watch this. That means even when I'm confused about what his head is deciding, I trust his heart.
Yes, sir.
So he can make decisions that I don't understand until he can help me understand them. And I keep moving because I trust his heart.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said to the disciples, there's some things I'm telling you right now you don't even understand. But you'll come to understand them. The prophet, like I said it this way, you'll know if you follow on to know. There's some things that you have to keep walking to understand here, but you've trusted them here. And the alignment that has to happen in a local church, here's the alignment. You have to go heart, head, hands. And we as leaders often ask people for their hands before we ever get them to trust our heart. And when there's no trust here, there won't be any release here.
Yeah.
You'll get tokens until people trust. I was at Billy Joe Doherty's preaching the week they announced he had cancer before he died. I don't know if you're familiar with Billy Joe or not. Victory Church in Tulsa. It's an incredible church. They probably run 15,000 on the weekend. He had built a building, $35 million building program, and it was paid for the day they moved in. Y'all just act like it happened.
Yes,
every day,
sir.
Mississippi.
Praise God. In Jesus' name.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's fine.
That's amazing. Yeah.
35 million paid for the day they walked in.
Wow.
Receive that.
At his funeral, they announced he had just finished building his 1,000th Bible school in 30 years of leading that church.
Wow.
Just finished his 1,000th Bible school. And he had planted 1,100 churches in 100 nations in 30 years.
Amazing.
And I was there speaking, and I'm like, Wednesday night, probably 4,000 or 5,000 people Wednesday night. And I'm thinking, I mean, there's no pomp and circumstance. There's just a guy with a piano and a guitar, and they're just singing some worship songs, and people are just worshiping. No fanfare, no hype. They make the announcements. I get done, I go out that night, I'm there with the Bible school director who's been a friend for a long, long time, and I just said to him, I said, Ron, all right, you got to help me. I said, I don't get it. One of my guys was with me, Jay Pike. I looked at Jay, I said, we work way too hard. We work way too hard. You know, in our house, if you ain't sweating, you ain't doing nothing, right? So,
Come on, man.
We're working way too hard. I don't know what it is we're not doing right, but we're working way too hard. And I looked at Ron, I said, explain it to me. And he said, oh, Bishop, that's not hard. He said, people show up here every week. Billy Joe was an adequate Bible teacher. He was a great administrator. Not overly personable, very shy individual. His wife's very outgoing. He said, but here's the reason thousands of people show up here every week. They trust him. They trust him. If he says they're going to build a Bible school in 90 days in Russia, then somebody can go take a picture. In 90 days, there'll be a Bible school in Russia.
Yeah.
Because the culture of that house is we don't stand up and speak pipe dreams.
That's right.
Because that's what destroys trust.
It's good.
That's the truth.
Come on. I mean, if you want a culture that moves things forward, the atmosphere, there has to be a culture in that house that says, I trust the person that's leading.
That's right.
If not, you're depositing seed into an environment that will never allow it to germinate and produce. Next, when it comes to culture, you have to celebrate the uniqueness. The uniqueness. What's the unique factor of your house? What we forget is the very thing that makes us valuable, we seek to try to get rid of. Do you know that originals are always more expensive than copies? You always pay more for an original. The thing that makes you different in the city you're in, what is the unique factor?
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Why would people pass 14 other churches to come to yours? But yet we keep trying to build churches that look like somebody else's.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, you can ask people, what kind of church is it? Well, it's like so-and-so's church. Or it's like, it's a this kind of church, or it's a that kind of church.
Come on.
And we just totally negate the unique factor. What is it about RJ that's different than Jody? And the uniqueness of these two people makes something happen in this house that give them viable reason for being in this city together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If we all were the same and alike, there wouldn't be no reason for us all to be here doing something different.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if there's a different uniqueness to what God is expressing himself through in that house, celebrate the uniqueness.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
I preached for a guy in Houston. First time I met him, I thought it was Wyatt Earp. I thought he was off of a television western. I thought he'd just come in costume. I honestly didn't know people actually dressed like that. I'm not kidding. He came walking in with jeans and cowboy boots and a long coat down here and a cowboy hat and a bandana tied around his neck. And I'm thinking, he just came off of a television set somewhere. What is he doing? And that's him. That is him. Totally him. And he's in a culture of Houston, right outside of Houston. And I go to his church to preach, and he calls it the Little Country Church. And he invites me to come, and I'm like, I'm not going to the Little Country Church. What am I going to fly to Houston to go to the Little Country Church for? And somebody said to me, Bishop, you got to go. You got to go. Somebody that knew said, you got to go. It's an oxymoron. He's trying to fool people. And I flew down to Houston and went to the Little Country Church. And I pulled on to a 110-acre campus. And on a Sunday night, 1,200 people packed into a building. And he has a place out front called the Hog Pen. The Hog Pen. And there was about 60 motorcycles parked in the Hog Pen. I walked in, I've never seen so much leather. I bet it took 2 herds of cows to die for that church just to get ready for church. There was leather everywhere. It was, and his band, his worship team, are y'all ready? His worship team was called the Baptist Bar and Grill Band. It's on the drum cage. The Baptist Bar and Grill Band. And I said to him, I said, why is it called? And on both sides of the stage, they got a 12-point buck on this side, a head, and a 14 buck on that side. And I said, first of all, the Baptist Bar and Grill Band, how did that happen? He said, well, one of them was a Baptist, the rest of them I got out of the bar and grill. He said, it ain't deep, Bishop, thus the Baptist Bar and Grill Band. And whoever kills the biggest deer that year, they get to put their head up in the sanctuary. Today he's got 2 campuses, and both of them are thriving with people. 2 services a day. And on that 110-acre camp, he now has a summer camp with over 12,000 kids that come through that summer camp in the summer. He has a zip line. He has a huge Olympic-sized swimming pool. The way he does, I didn't believe him. The way he does baptism, he has a slide, a water slide, and he gets on the top of the slide with people. They sit down. He says, do you believe in Jesus? They said, yeah, I give my heart to Jesus. He said, I now baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And he said, I push them down the slide, and they go down the slide into the baptismal pool. It's the craziest thing you ever seen in your life. But I went there to talk to his leaders this past year, and he said, Bishop, he said, here's my issue. I understand our uniqueness, but how do we enlarge this culture to make it inviting for people that are not like us? Because I don't want to lose my unique factor. You say, well, it's just a bunch of hillbillies. No. What I found out is everybody in his church almost works at NASA, or there's some executive for the oil companies. Got a NASA scientist who rides a motorcycle and has leather jeans on Sunday. He's ushering. It's their weekend getaway, I guess. They live outside of Houston. Unique factor. So you can't, why not reach people? Because there's an element that God called you to.
Good.
You just have to find your niche. It's really good.
Yeah, it is.
There has to be a sense of respect for everybody involved. This has to do with a team dynamic. You can't have turf wars on your team. You can't allow silos to be built. Anytime the youth department doesn't care that the First Impressions team is succeeding, something's wrong.
That's right.
That's good.
You can't sit and say, I'm on the worship team. I don't care whether the ushers get enough volunteers. Ain't my problem. Well, it is. It's our problem. Because we share this vision together. And the culture of this house is, I respect what you're doing, you respect what I'm doing, and we're not going to build silos, nor are we going to have turf wars. Sometimes you have to intentionally move people and say, you know what, I know you've served there for 2 years, but I think right now you'd serve me better over here.
Yes.
And if you're more in love with your position than you are the vision, you're in trouble. Your allegiance has to be the vision, not your position.
Yes. That's very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, Bishop.
Yep.
That's good.
Pastor Lonnie told me that. I believe that. Here's the last thing. When it comes to culture, the next most important thing is called execution. Execution. After all is said and done, Ryan, will you come to the keyboard? How many of you know, listen to what I'm about to say, after all is said and done, in most churches, more is said than done. We love to talk about stuff. But the key to culture is execution. I found out that we love to talk about change, pray about change, read about change, prophesy about change, preach about change. The only thing we never want to do is change. Change. Now this is really deep. It's going to be the deepest thing I leave you with before we go today. Change is not change until it's changed. It's not change when you think about it. It's change when you execute it, when you do it. So I just pray today that God will give you the strategy for the culture.